All right, let's go to our buddy here, Nate. Mr. Nate Ball on Discord, Mr. Saul for live ranges. What's going on, Nate?
Nothing much. How you doing, Bart?
Pretty good, man. You got a hand for us here out of Cincinnati?
Yes, out of Cincinnati.
All right.
This is 2-5, 1K effective,
Yep.
and I'm under the gun with Jack of Clubs, Jack of Spades.
So 2-5, 1K in Cincinnati, and 1K effective too. By the way, Nate, do games ever go that are bigger than this in your area at all?
5-10 runs on weekends.
Oh, it does.
sometimes.
Okay. So here it has Jack UTG.
Yeah, I have Jack, Blackjacks under the gun,
Okay.
and we open at $20,
Okay.
and the low Jack, button, and big blind call.
So low Jack, button, and big blind call. All right, here we go. It's going to be a four-way, multi-way stuff here. So far here on the show. So Jack under the gun at 20, low Jack, button, big blind call. We're off to the races here with about 80 in there.
Yep, 80 in the pot.
Yep.
We go to the flop, and it's Jack of Diamonds, 10 of Clubs, 5 of Diamonds.
So you flop top set here, right? Jack of diamonds, 10 of clubs, 5 of diamonds, but it is pretty draw heavy.
Yeah, very draw heavy board. And what do you think about sizing here?
So big blind checks, and you've got so you got two guys behind you, and the pot's 80. I think, obviously you're blocking top pair, but I still go 2/3 here. I don't think I go small. Obviously it would be slightly better if you have 10-10, but it's not like a 10's going to fold. There's so many draw. This is not Jack 6 deuce rainbow, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I go 50.
Okay.
And the button calls.
All right. So hero bets 50, button calls, and we're at 180. Everybody else folds, right? So you are now heads up, and this sort of a in-between type of spot here where this guy here calls, like, not really next to act, but not quite. He's calling from the middle, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So we think he's pretty strong or on a strong draw here, in my opinion.
Yeah, diamonds, king, queen, right? He could have the case jack too, 8-9. There's a queen 9 suited, stuff like that, right?
Right.
Yep.
So we get to the turn with 180 in the pot, and we get the 6 of clubs.
6 of clubs. I'm just gonna say there aren't many bricks on this distribution, besides like cards that are under a 7, right? That aren't diamonds, but you get one of them. But then there's not going to be bricks on the river really now either, right? Because we've got up and down straight draw. So literally almost no bricks.
Right, for sure. So what do you think about sizing here?
I would probably continue to go 2/3, to be honest with you. If not, if you want to start going pot here, 2 as well. But, I just don't see the need to really go on the smaller side because I think the draws are still going to call you. Maybe you get slivers of like 9-10 that might have called that probably shouldn't have called to fold out. Or something like that, but sort of going back to what you said about the range, right? That's kind of what we're looking at here.
Right.
Yep.
So with the double flush draw out there and really no bricks on the river, I decided to overbet and go 250 and the 180.
So you decided to overbet here.
Yes.
So Nate and I are working on a podcast that Nate helped me develop. It's either going to be probably this week or next week about overbetting, right, Nate?
Yes.
So we'll get into more of that here. So Nate goes 250 here on the turn as an overbet. Now, do you think though that the overbet would be better with like a hand like 10s here or something that unblocks top pair?
Yes, it's much better if we unblock top pair for sure. But with the board having the double flush draw, it unlocks it. With this many draws on the board, we just unlock the overbets.
Yeah. So you go 250, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he calls.
Okay, so this is interesting because at this point, so now it's 580, because at this point you would think that his range now is probably weighted towards a lot of draws, right? When you have top set, obviously unblocking top pair would be better for overbets. Because then, if you did unblock top pair, you'd have a decision to make on the river. It could even be a little bit more tricky. He would have more top pair in his range, right? To put it simply. But here, you block a lot of the top pair. So, and there's a lot of draws out there, right? There's a lot of draws. Now, you have the jack of clubs, so he can't have jack X on the backdoor side. Again, the board is jack of diamonds, 10 of clubs, 5 of diamonds, 6 of clubs, but there's a lot of straight draws and stuff out there. And then he can also have diamonds that turn even lower straight draws too, right? There's a lot of stuff with a 10 and a 5 out there. All right, so 250 and call. So now the pot is 580 and you guys have what, like 600 left, 620 left, something like that?
Like 620, 640 maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
The pot's actually 680 though.
Oh, 680. I'm sorry. 680. You're right. 680. Okay.
All right. So on the river, we get the 4 of spades.
4 of spades. So again, the only thing that this changes now is what you lose to like 7, 8 of diamonds here, right?
Yeah, that's basically it.
7, 8 of diamonds, right? So front door that ran into us, or who knows how wide this guy is, 7, 4, some bullshit, right? Deuce 3 of diamonds, 7, 4 of diamonds, 3, 7 of diamonds, some sort of, basically you losing to a straight that was on the front door flush side, I assume, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Because, he really, I don't think he's calling with like 7, 8 of clubs on the flop, right? The ass end of a gut shot with a guy behind him.
Yeah, really I highly doubt it. It's just 7, 8 of diamonds.
So Jack 10, 5, 6, 4. And I think what's interesting here, Nate, maybe I'm trying to read your mind on where you're going to go with this, because most of the time I preach, I don't really like checking rivers a whole lot in live poker because there's 2 reasons to obviously, check the river at the end, and you can do it at high stakes. And the primary reason usually is to induce a bluff, and then secondary, sometimes you can get somebody to value own themselves, which of course is betting a value hand that's worse than yours that they would otherwise fold if you bet. That number 2 is definitely not applicable to this hand, right? When you hold,
right.
no Jack X is going to bet. I mean, if he's got a set, he's going to call your bet anyway. I mean, value owning is when a guy would bet when he would otherwise fold, right? So
right.
That part's out the window. What's interesting here is that, and maybe you might be going with this, is that as a reflex, people would always want to bet here. But are you thinking that it might be more efficient to sometimes check because this board is so draw heavy?
Yeah, so I think if he's on a draw, which we're weighing him heavily towards a draw, and anytime someone has more draws than value, we can check here, because especially low stakes villains have really hard time just checking back air. It's like check back to lose. They bet a lot here.
That's interesting, because that is a little bit counter to what sometimes I say, where people will not bluff enough in a given spot. I think part of the interesting part of this conversation is, of course, texture too of the board, because I think this board is different. And I'm not talking about how present the draws are. I'm talking about what you might have. This board is different than if the board was like ace 9-3, 2 flush, turns a deuce, right? You bet again, guy calls, and then the river is like a brick, and you check. Especially if you bet into multi-way people, a lot of live villains are going to have an ace in your spot and are looking to check call. Whereas here, you could come, I think, reasonably up with a scenario where you might have been barreling with ace king here and just giving up, thinking the guy has a jack, right? You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to think about the types of boards that might give the villain the green light to bluff more often here. So, yeah, I mean, you'd have to weigh it with like, how often does he have a hand that he's going to call with versus how often is he going to bluff? And I think that doing this with pocket jacks is much, much better than doing it with what we had said in terms of unblocking the top pair, right? This is kind of interesting, where this is probably the one where you might, if I were to pick a hand to check call, maybe this is the one that I do it with, as opposed to pocket tens, pocket aces, something like that. Am I on the right track? Is that what you're thinking about here?
Yeah, spot on, 100%.
Okay.
So I check, and he thinks for about 15, 20 seconds and fires 600.
Wow. How much does he have left, by the way?
He left himself like over $30, but like maybe 40 behind.
So button bet 600.
Yes.
You know what's funny here? I mean, I know it's trivial with the 30, $30 to $50 behind, but this is actually one of these spots where if he's truly polar, meaning like if he either has a straight or air, your hand is just a call, right? Like even for the extra $50, it would make no sense for you to check raise all in here, right?
Right. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, the only case would be like if you had a set, but I don't think that that's the case. I mean, obviously I assume you check snap call, right?
Right. Right. I don't think about this at all.
So check snap and
he just mulks, and we're good.
Nice. Mutton call. So I saw somebody in the live chat down here. Is there ever a case to be made were you ever thinking about throwing in one of these? This is one of these ones that's kind of hard to execute in real time. Were you ever thinking about throwing in a reverse block, which is like one of these small bets, trying to get raised, trying to induce a raise? Like instead of checking, betting like 40 or something like that.
Right. So I hear people say this at times, but I don't see people raise tiny block bets often enough.
Okay.
Like you get an occasional spaz, but I don't see it where they definitely don't do it for value, so it would only be for a bluff that could work in this spot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're much more likely if we check to bet than if we try to induce.
Get fancy with it. So you expect a higher bluffing frequency if you check as opposed to like throw in some ridiculous reverse block.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that makes sense. Nicely played, Nate. That's one of the ones where, we don't really get into that spot all that much, talking about check calling. I've always used that example with trips in limp pots out of the big blind with weak trips. You can sometimes, when you run into trips on the river, when you've been betting on a draw heavy board, like a jack deuce hand on like, jack 9-3 2 flush.
Right.
Say you have jack 4 and it's like jack 9-3 2 flush, and you bet and get a call and turns a deuce, and you bet and get a call, and now the river's a jack. You run into trips on the river and you check it. You check it because, the guy's either going to have a jack or a busted draw. Your jack loses, but what you give him a green light when you check to bluff when that top card, because so few people are checking trips. That's the example that I use. But yeah, this is a good one too.
Awesome.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bart. Have a good.
All right. And again, guys, if you're not a Crush Live Poker subscriber, we've got a great Discord, great community, and Nate is the man. He is over there, and he's got his own channel. He's got the Solve for Live channel, very, very active. I've been trying to be more and more active too myself, but if you like the way that Nate talks and thinks about poker, that's another great sort of feature to the site, because he's very, very active over there in Discord.